The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. It is the return of the Nerdcast News Report for Monday, June the 9th, 2025. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. After about a month hiatus of our news podcast, we are back and better than ever, I guess you could say, as we are ready to get back to all the nerdy news that you need to know here on the Nerdcast Empire. It's been a little while, and you know, we're going to kind of start off with topics that are pretty much in our wheelhouse on this podcast because obviously that's the biggest part of news that has happened since the last time we were together. And we will get to that on tonight's edition of the Nerdcast News Report. Joining me in studio on this Monday evening, East Coast time, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. It's been a while. A lot of stuff has happened as far as what we talk about that we haven't really had a chance to talk about. Obviously, today we're going to spend a lot of time on the Switch 2, which I've spent a lot of time on myself. But beyond that, you know, before that I was getting into the remaster of Lunar, which is a really, really cool game, and found myself getting into the Apothecary Diaries, a show that I didn't think I really wanted to watch, but as I started getting into it, it's actually amazing.
Yeah, we do need to get caught up on some anime talk. We'll probably do that on Friday's edition of the Nerdcast News Report. Kind of kept everything more toward the video game side and the pro wrestling side on tonight's edition, just to kind of get us off to a quick start and focusing most of the main news items on the thing that Mike mentioned a moment ago, and that is that the Nintendo Switch 2 is now available. It is now out. You can pick it up in many retailers right this very minute, in fact. And, you know, it's one of those things we've talked about a lot, and we've talked about some of the specs, and we've talked about just kind of all the things that, you know, as the news would break throughout the spring, you know, what this was going to look like. And, you know, fortunately, as we talked about on the podcast, you had a pre-order in for the Switch 2, and, you know, no issues with the pre-order. It arrived as scheduled, and you've had the chance to kind of give it a first-hand whirl and kind of give your get initial thoughts on what you think about the system. So generally, we'll start with the positive stuff. Your overall impressions of the Switch 2 so far?
Yeah, you know, the whole experience so far has been pretty smooth. I pre-ordered mine through Walmart the night that the pre-sales went live. I kind of sat in a queue for a while, kind of figured I wouldn't be getting one, and lo and behold, it jumped me into where I could actually put it in my cart and pre-order it, and I did. You know, as the weeks progressed, you had more and more people facing order cancellations from their retailers, whether it be Best Buy, Target, or Walmart. So I was kind of curious because, you know, they had a hold on my card, but they hadn't charged it yet. And a few days out, they finally did place the charge on there, which gave me a certain amount of confidence. And yeah, by 8:05 the morning it released, it was at my doorstep, which is pretty amazing. I mean, I understand people that were out at midnight certainly got there sooner, but if I can get a good night's sleep and start my gaming on the new hardware at 8:05 a.m., I think I can live with that.
Yeah, I think the days of necessarily wanting to play it right at midnight when it comes out, probably not necessary anymore. And, you know, that's really, to me, almost something more about a new game release than it is about a new game system release, because in theory, this is a game system you're going to be playing for years and years and years. It's not something like, oh, this new game comes out, I'm going to get this, and I have to start it right at midnight. So, yeah, understandable, but certainly understandable for the people that decided they needed it at midnight and decided to go out and line up.
For the people who couldn't secure a pre-order, I get it. But,
yeah,
man, the second that I knew I was guaranteed one, or presumed I was guaranteed one, I'd much rather you just bring it to me. I don't really want to be out late and fight nonsense. I remember back in the days, like one of the first midnight releases I really remember as a video game purchasing adult would have been the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And just the insanity that was, and not something I really long for. So, Walmart brought it to my house. They included a can of Pringles and a 20-ounce orange cream Coca-Cola as a bonus pre-order thing. So, unexpected, but kind of cool. As far as the actual getting into the system itself, still a little confused about the virtual game card situation.
Yeah.
I get that they wanted to try something a little different as far as how you share games throughout a household if you have multiple users on the same Switch account. And even the idea that you could then resell the game and it be doable as long as the game is still downloadable. But it creates a weird situation when you have multiple systems and you don't know. Like in my case, I was going to check out Pokemon Violet to see what it looked like on the new hardware, because that was obviously one of the issues with the original Switch was how poorly some games ran, that one being one of them. And I went to load it on my Switch 2 and it told me that, hey, you can't use the DLC because it's loaded on a different Switch. Okay. So due to issues, I have more Nintendo Switches than a normal person should have.
Three of them,
given how much yeah. I mean, I have my original one. It seemingly died one day, so I ordered a new one. It resurrected, so then I had two that were functional, and then one thing I love and hate about Nintendo is their kind of special edition consoles. I wish they would just release those at the same time as the base unit, but they came out with like the Pokemon Violet and Scarlet Switch OLED, which I didn't have an OLED up to that point. So I figured I'd pull the trigger on that, hence 3 Nintendo Switches, and 2 of which had no battery life whatsoever left. I had to charge them up to figure out where this virtual game card was. I ultimately did, but it's just, I don't know why, given they're all my systems, I can't just load the game on one and say, hey, yank the virtual card from the other one without me having to do it from that one. I feel like that would have been much more convenient. That being said, Pokemon Violet does look amazing on the Switch too. There's not the weird frame rate nonsense where if there's multiple things on the screen, it starts doing like stop motion animation on you. So that's definitely cool. I'd also saw a couple videos on YouTube talking about a game that I'll never understand why they even released it on the Switch back in the day, but WWE 2K18.
Oh, wow.
Anytime you have a mainline sports type title releasing on what was beyond inferior hardware like the Switch, it's always a little confusing, and it ran just horribly bad, like to the point where it wasn't even available to purchase on the Switches on the Nintendo eShop anymore. But people who had the physical copy pulled it up on their Switch too, and apparently it also now runs serviceable, so that's really cool. I bought the bundle with the Mario Kart World. Really cool game. I haven't played Mario Kart in a while, but certainly have enjoyed my time with it. I would say it's definitely worth the $50 that it is with the bundle.
Yeah.
You're paying $50 more than the base unit for the Mario Kart World. Whether it's worth $80 or not, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm happy to pay $80 for any video game. So I would certainly apply that to Mario Kart World as well. But, I mean, it's a game that I think Nintendo is going to support and is going to be actively updated. And they expect it to live as long as the system, pretty much like Mario Kart 8 did. So we'll see. But, yeah, so far so good with the Switch, too.
Yeah, it's great to hear. And, we don't, for those of you who maybe don't listen to our music podcast, which you should, but we end our music podcast with something called the Power Trio. And in a question that, obviously we don't have that on this podcast, but a question that kind of popped into my mind is, what 3 video games would you pay $80 for if they released today? Like, and because I'm sure you can come up with a list of probably way more than 3, but that's just kind of one of those, like, if you knew you could just get your hands on it today for the first time and it was $80, like, which ones would you actually pay that for?
I think that's a difficult question, because the second you pick some retro game, you sound like you're insane. Like, just based on the amount of storage and memory that's required to run this thing, why would you pay $80 for it? Because,
right.
To me, one of the greatest games of all time, something like a Chrono Trigger. Heck, for Super Nintendo, it probably was $80 when it came out, because Super Nintendo had some pretty crazy price points. But, that would certainly be one of them. And then you think, like, bang for your buck. If I was just paying $80 and I didn't have to pay anything else for it, something like a World of Warcraft would make a lot of sense, because the amount of content that you're getting for $80, you're certainly getting your money's worth.
Yeah.
Man, beyond that would be difficult. The cop-out cheap thing would be give me the Final Fantasy Pixel remaster, because that's got 6 games on it. But yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy 6 would be a possibility. Final Fantasy 7, 10, 12, 4, you name it. So many good games in that series. But yeah, thankfully, I don't really ever have to limit myself to 3 games. I think that'd be fairly difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not even sure I could come up with 3, to be completely honest. But this is a good time for me to post the link to the Discord in our chat. So if you want to let us know what 3 games you might pay $80 for over the history of video games, if you got your hands on it for the first time today, let us know. Join the Discord, tell us, jump in the general chat, and let us know what games you would actually pay that kind of money for. Because, yeah, I mean, it does seem pretty pricey, but again, I will say the one thing about the Mario Kart games is the replay value on those is pretty high. I would think a Mario Party game would also be kind of in that, for that same reason, that there are still people that stream the very earliest Mario Party games.
The ones that came out on 64, like especially like Mario Party 3, that's just an all-time classic.
Yeah, so, if you start like doing the math in your head of the replay value of some of these games that just go on and on and on, you could probably justify that kind of price tag.
Yeah, I think the big thing is going to be, will they eventually do something similar with Mario Kart World that they did with 8 Deluxe, where they're like, hey, we're going to do this kind of paid super pack, all these new tracks that you can get. I think if you bought the upgraded Switch Online account, they would give it to you, but otherwise there was a charge for it. Because I think with Mario Kart 8, even though it persisted throughout the Wii U all the way through the life of the Switch, I'm guessing they probably felt like they were leaving some money on the table if they didn't at some point try to charge people more for it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's when I finally bought a Switch, was sometime last year, I think. I got the Mario Kart 8 bundle with the deluxe with all the extra maps and stuff, and it's a lot of fun, and I played the heck out of it. And I'm sure this is going to be very much the same way. And honestly, the new Mario Kart game is one of those things that's kind of pulling on me, like maybe you should go ahead and get the Switch 2 just so you can play that. But I think it's a pretty smart title to come out with, and I do agree. I think at some point they'll revisit that and add on to it just to add that extra value, and of course get a little bit of extra money somewhere down the road. Speaking of money, this thing made a lot of money already. That is the next headline. The news from Game Rant that according to some insiders, the Nintendo Switch 2 sold roughly 3 million units globally on launch day. That would surpass the record for the most consoles sold in a single day, which was held by the PlayStation 4 at just over 1 million units worldwide in 2013. Obviously, there's going to be 2 sides to that story. Number one, had the PlayStation 5 actually had enough inventory out when it was released, could it have broken that record? Possibly. But the other side to that, too, is, I guess 2 things. One, all we've heard since the price points have been announced is how expensive everything is, which, again, not disputing that. I mean, it is a chunk of money. I mean, it is what it is. But it clearly didn't deter a lot of people from getting it. It's sold incredibly well, and it's still available. Like, if you didn't get one yet and you're on the fence and you're thinking, maybe I'm going to run out and get one. Oh, man, can I even go get one? Yeah, you can absolutely go get one now, which also differentiates it from the recent PlayStation 5 release.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because obviously one of the big issues is that people were kind of starved for the next iteration of the Switch for years now. I mean, people were talking about a Switch Pro for several years thinking that they might do that kind of incremental step that we've seen Microsoft and Sony do, and to the point where that's kind of, and even Nintendo with the OLED, that's kind of been the formula, is that instead of waiting a really long time and then releasing the next step, you always kind of have this halfway step in between. And I think the OLED didn't really qualify as that because ultimately the hardware wasn't really even a half step forward. It was just a better screen and better battery life, I think. And clearly, even you still had games that were not running very well on the OLED. So, instead of doing the Pro, they kind of held on with the Switch and got to the point where people really were just dying for that next one. And as a result, I think you're seeing kind of people kind of backed into buying it, where you had games on the current hardware that you bought the new hardware just so those games would play better. I think that's such a different mindset. But at the same time, too, is you look at like the PlayStation. Eventually, PlayStation is going to release a new system, and people are going to be mad at the price. But then they're also going to think, yeah, the PlayStation 6 is going to be crazy expensive, but that's going to come several years after PlayStation said, hey, you should buy the PlayStation 5 Pro for $700, even though you just bought the PlayStation 5 a few years before that. Like, I think any new system is going to feel overpriced, but I feel like at the very least, Nintendo didn't give you a $450 half step forward.
And I think there's still a lot of debate on what that new system's going to look like from Sony because, again, we've talked about it before. Sony's really competing against Microsoft, and there may not be another Microsoft system. They may just decide, like, look, we're just going to put all of our eggs in the PC gaming basket. You kind of already can do some of that.
Well, they did announce the new handheld just the other day. They're partnering with Asus to come out with basically the Asus Xbox ROG Ally and Ally X, which I don't know the price point on those yet, but like the current Ally X is like $700 or $800. So whatever the ultra powered Xbox iteration of it's going to be crazy expensive. But that does lead you to think that they're not going to abandon the console game, which is weird because that feels kind of counter how you felt about them as much as like a month ago.
Yeah. Or is it going to be a case where they're going to go the Switch route, except trying to maybe make it more powerful? Like we're going to we're going to go handheld like the Switch, but we're going to try to make it as powerful as the PlayStation, or a PC gaming, that, again, you're talking mega expense. You're talking about games going to be super expensive, and you're going to talk about hardware that's going to have to hold up to some rigorous gaming to be able to do that and not just overheat or just blow the thing up.
Well, I mean, the good news for Microsoft is that they do pretty much own, with the exception of obviously Steam, but PC gaming is Microsoft.
Yeah.
It is. Like, how many times my Windows tries to get me to buy Xbox Game Pass tells you that. So they got that going for them. It's something that Sony, unfortunately, does not have. But kind of jumping back to Nintendo, like, you see on social media people kind of trying to dunk on Nintendo because the Switch 2 isn't just sold out everywhere, that there's still a possibility you can find it in a store. And if these sales numbers are accurate and you can still find it in retail stores, that's not something to dunk on them for. That's ideal. Like, you should always want customers to be able to buy your product.
Yeah, and the one thing we talked about, it is a substantial amount of money, and especially as you get to be an adult, sometimes that window in your life when you have that expendable income might be pretty short. Like something may come up, hey, I've got $450 now or $500 to buy the Switch and a game. And, a month from now, like something goes out on your car or something, so you have a house expense and now that $500 is gone. And if you didn't have your product available during that window where I might've been looking to buy it or had a little extra money, Now I don't have that extra money anymore. It's not, not really the same thing. So, yeah, you definitely want to have people be able to go in or go online and pick up your product when they want to buy it.
Yeah, not only may that money not be around the next time around, but you might just move on. Like, there's so many things going on in your life that you might have had this fleeting moment of, oh, man, I want to try this new Mario Kart game. And a week later, 5 days later, an hour later, you may be like, nah, don't worry about it.
I totally get that because that feels like my life right now, where it's just like traveling for work and coaching and working and all this other stuff. It's just you feel like you have so many things pulling you in different directions that, like you said, if you miss that moment with a consumer, you may not get it back.
I think the best news about all of it, though, and the fact that these things are still somewhat available in retail stores, is what it's done to the scalpers.
Yeah,
which
is why they're really mad.
Yeah. The people who are mad, certainly. I think we all, any of us that are just customers, even those who think the Switch 2 is overpriced, we certainly aren't in favor of scalpers making double that off of people.
Yeah.
I saw one post on Facebook. It was like someone in like a Facebook marketplace chat with someone trying to sell a Switch 2 for like $800. And like the guy, the the potential customer was like, "Hey, you still got that?" And the guy's like, "Yeah." And the customer replied, "Of course, man. They're available everywhere. Why wouldn't you still have it?"
Whoops. Like, kind of, and you just wonder, like, how many pre-orders were bought with the full intent of turning around and selling them, and now they're stuck with a bunch of Switch 2s because, like you said, you can get them
Well,
anywhere.
yeah, I mean, there were eBay listings the second those pre-orders were accepted. Like, "Hey, we're selling this thing. Here's proof that we have it on pre-order." Like, just ridiculous. And I think it's perfect that we've reached a point where hopefully these scalpers will start getting away from these hobbies, that they're not going to make the money that they want to make, because it's just, you want legitimate people getting a hold of these items.
Yeah, certainly that's what we hope for, and I'm sure that's what Nintendo hopes for as well. They're not making any extra money off of this. So, but yeah, clearly doing very well. As with all new systems, there are some issues and concerns. You've already expressed one of those issues, and we can just discuss it a little bit further. Is this virtual card thing where, it feels like, and we talked about it when it was announced, that it feels like the next progression toward no physical games, because now you have to have this card to play the game. So it's like, in the end, you're still downloading it. So it just, I understand why it's happening, but it doesn't mean I necessarily have to enjoy the fact that it's happening.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird situation, because I get it from like the third-party developer standpoint, because from what I've heard, Nintendo's really only given them the availability of 2 different sizes of flash cards for the games. Something like comically small, like 8 gigs, and then like 64. So you have these games that fit somewhere between that, and the companies really see no reason to pay for the larger capacity cards when they can instead just give you the game key card, let you download it. And again, since you need that game key card to play the game, you can technically still resell it. Like, that's still a thing. Obviously, there's a shelf life when in the future this Switch Online, the Nintendo eShop won't offer you Switch games any longer, and you won't be able to redeem it at that point. But yeah, it's just this kind of weird like half step where it's like, these aren't really digital, but they are. I just, as someone who likes to collect physical, like, part of the appeal of that is knowing that you have the item on the physical thing. So to me, this kind of defeats the purpose of wanting a digital version. I've been considering buying the remaster or remake of the Bravely Default game. Great game. But it's like, why don't I just buy it off the eShop right off the bat? Just buy the digital. What's my incentive for wanting the case with the game key card inside it?
Yeah, and it does, after we were just talking about scalpers, like, with the other thing it does take away the future retro market, because yeah, you have the key card, but like you said, at some point, maybe it's 20, 30 years from now, who knows, but the game's not going to exist in digital form in some sort of cloud on Nintendo's site, so they'll have moved on to something else. So now that card is completely worthless because you can't go download the game, so therefore the retro ability to play that game in 20 years and get the same value out of it is now gone. And of course, they're not going to admit that that's going to happen, but I mean, logically speaking, it just makes sense.
Well, I think you're forcing the retro collectors in that market to go further into the reproduction and kind of the shadier side of it, where there's no way to buy this physically, but I have the ROM that I now have on this flash card that you can use. That's how you're going to have to do it. And it's hard to really fault that mindset, because again, we were all raised on, I have the game in my hand, I'm going to put it in my system and it'll work. That's never going to not be the case. Well, now it might be the case.
Yeah, I'm not terribly crazy about that, and unfortunately, it feels like one of those things that the other system manufacturers are almost certainly going to copy. The other issue, and at least the other one I saw, and then we'll, if you found any as well, we can mention those. But seems like some continuing issues with Joy-Con drift. It was an issue with the original Switch, and I know they did some replacements, and my understanding is they are doing replacements of them free of charge. But it's just another one of those things that when you're charging what you're charging for a new system, when it is a known issue with your previous system, the fact that you weren't able to get that right out of the box is a little concerning. Now, understandably, there will eventually be a pro controller, and I won't say most, a lot of gamers will use that in lieu of using the Joy-Cons, but it's just not really a good look when you've got something new, but you bring back an old problem. I think that certainly is a little bit concerning.
I mean, again, you can buy the Pro controller. It's $85. I did not purchase it with mine. I figured I would hold off. I think I can use my old Pro controller for a lot of titles, so I'll probably do that for if I feel the need. Right now, I'm just using the Joy-Cons in the little holder as a controller, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I was doing some reading on it, and the issue is obviously that these Joy-Cons slowly just start wearing out, like the housing that they're in, which leads it to just kind of pretend like you're using it when you're not, and the movement's happening. But kind of the replacement to that would be using Hall effect sticks, and the problem there, at least what PC Mag was speculating is the problem, is that those rely on magnets. Now, the Switch 2 Joy-Cons also use magnets to connect it to the system. So there's a thought that wouldn't work together, that the magnets would interfere with each other. Maybe that's why they opted to maintain the kind of the status quo on their joysticks. But yeah, I mean, at least they're seemingly really open to replacing them for people. There's that. I also wonder, too, if it's kind of a cost thing, that there are enough people out there that they might experience the Joy-Con drift, but it might be, months or a year down the road in which they just go, well, I'll go buy new Joy-Cons. They're not going to take it up with Nintendo. They're just going to replace them themselves. And it just doesn't make financial sense to put more money into the Joy-Cons if people are content just buying new copies of the old ones.
Or they'll just go buy the Pro controller.
Yeah.
Like they'll just, and I imagine a lot of gamers are going to do that. But like you said, another $85 on top of the money you've already spent, that does hurt a little bit for, I have to buy this thing to fix the thing that you gave me with my system for free.
Yeah.
That is a little tough, but yeah, I think the magnet issue probably at least is part of the reason why they weren't able to do it a little differently. And you hope that, because we know, or we're pretty sure that somewhere down the road there will be an OLED version of the Switch 2.
I would imagine.
Probably a couple years from now. So my hope is that you've got a couple more years. Like maybe you can figure out something for these Joy-Cons in the next 2 years that solve that problem once and for all.
Yeah.
And then that gives people another reason to not only buy the OLED for the cool things that it can do, but also maybe a permanent fix to that issue as well.
And I assume by then you'll have some sort of OLED model that's the special edition for whatever the next 3D Zelda game is, or next 3D Mario, something that'll give you more of an incentive beyond it just being OLED. It'll also be this cool game tie-in version, which I would certainly consider buying in that case.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will. But I think, as we get ready to wrap this up, overall, thumbs up on the Switch 2?
Yeah, I've had no issues. I did have one instance day one where I had to hard reset it. Still don't know why, and it hasn't happened since.
Oh, okay.
But that's really been the only kind of negative I've seen. Obviously, I know people have had other issues. There were the one GameStop that was stapling the receipts to the box that was causing screen damage, because for reasons that I think are a little weird, like when you open up the box, you lift up the lid, it's sitting there face up pretty much right underneath the top of the box. Like,
why would you pack it that way?
I just feel like that's asking for damage. I've seen other instances of just people, typical stuff, dead pixels, screen scratches pretty quickly. But other than that, no problems on my end.
Yeah, it's good to hear. And obviously, Mike will continue to play it. Maybe at some point I'll pick one up as well. And again, join our Discord if you happen to pick up a Switch 2 and want to talk about good, bad, otherwise, games that you're interested in, games that you might be playing that we want to know about. Let us know, and we'll definitely talk about it. I'm sure it will not be the last time we'll talk about the Switch 2 on the podcast, and we'd love to know what you have to say about it. So that pretty much is the roundup of the Switch 2. As all things Switch 2 comes to a close, it's time to dive into all things pro wrestling, and to do that, we'll head into the Empire Express. Are you ready to go, Mike?
Let's do it.
Let's wrap this up with the Empire Express. At WWE Money in the Bank this weekend, Seth Rollins and Naomi won the briefcases, guaranteeing them a title match at some point in the future, were those the right choices?
Yeah, I'm not surprised Seth won, although I think you could have made a case that LA Knight is kind of past due on his push to the top. I think Naomi is totally justified, despite that field being stacked and pretty much everyone in that match could have been a legitimate winner. Happy for her, love the character she's got going on now. Can't wait to see what she does next. WWE Worlds Collide, El Hijo del Vikingo defended the AAA Mega Championship in a classic match with Chad Gable. Was that the best match of the weekend?
Yeah, I think it was. Honestly, the Worlds Collide event was excellent, really beginning to end. And Money in the Bank was not a bad event by any stretch, but it felt like the old days of the black and gold NXT events before your WWE events. Even when WWE's pay-per-view was good, NXT was almost always better. And indeed, in this case, I think that match stole the weekend.
Yeah.
The wrestler who may have actually stole the weekend, though, was AAA wrestler Mr. Iguana and his stuffed iguana, La Yesca. Are you surprised to see him get over? And who should WWE fans check out from AAA next?
I'm more surprised that the higher-ups at WWE recognized his potential and actually his sports entertainment appeal than I am that he got over so well. Other names that we haven't seen yet, I'd like to see Nino Hamburguesa, Monster Clown, Murder Clown, Lady Maravilla, and I think someone who's kind of a no-brainer who you see on AAA fairly regularly, Sam Adonis.
Yeah, especially the fact that he is the brother of Corey Graves.
Who did an amazing job on commentary.
Kudos to Corey Graves, who absolutely killed it, and kudos to the Spanish announcers from AAA being brought in, who also really gave it a AAA feel, so that was really excellent as well.
All right, so WWE AAA Worlds Collide event became WWE's most live-streamed YouTube broadcast in the company's history, peaking at nearly 765,000 live viewers. The English and Spanish streams have combined for 4.7 million views so far. Is this a home run deal for WWE?
Yeah, it sure is, and I think, I don't even think they realized what this was going to mean right out of the gate. And again, AAA's got a big event coming up this weekend in Triple Mania Regia. So we'll see kind of what happens there. We already know that the Garzas are going to be there. Will there be other surprises from WWE? I think everybody's still kind of wanting to see what this is going to look like. Will we be able to watch that here in the States? Will there regular TV that currently airs on Space in Mexico? Will that air here in the States? A lot of questions still.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I don't think they could possibly be happier with how things have started off. Last week on NXT TV, Mariah May made her WWE debut after a solid run in AEW. Not sure what her name will be yet, but do you think she'll be the next big women's star for WWE?
She certainly could be. The women's rosters are getting more and more crowded on every show. But lately, all the women that they've given big deal debuts on NXT have been home runs, and Mariah May certainly has the aura of a star, so wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's a big move, and obviously someone who's been a lifelong WWE fan, so kudos to her, and excited to see what she brings to NXT television, and we'll probably find out more tomorrow night. But that is going to wrap things up for the return of the Nerdcast News Report. You're all caught up on your nerdy news for this week. We'll be back again with you on Friday for another episode of the Nerdcast News Report, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We will try to get you caught up on some anime news on Friday, as well as some other things going on in the nerdy universe. We'll be doing that, so make sure you join us then. And, of course, Sunday night, if you didn't get a chance to listen to the music podcast last night, it is available on Twitch and on YouTube. Of course, that is the Hard Rock Empire. We'll be back again next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, for another episode of that, and it'll be the music of May 23rd that we'll be talking about on the podcast. Big thanks to Chris for joining us in the chat. Big thanks to Stoveblade Media for their continued support of our podcast. Big thanks to Mike as well for joining me. And a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever. Make sure you join the Discord. Follow us, subscribe to us, whatever you can do. We really appreciate it. Share our posts. It's a big help, and continue to grow our podcast. That's going to wrap things up for this evening. For Mike and the rest of the crew, I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.